We're now ready to have the opening statement of Kim King.
Thank you, Dr. Mercer, Best Sound Around, and WHBN for the opportunity to share my bold, conservative message with this year's voters. As always, I appreciate my husband, Carrie, and our children and grandchildren for their attendance and ongoing support. Hadley Rose King, the latest addition to our family, was born just last week. Our daughter-in-law, Heather, big sister Paisley, and little sister Hadley are listening to WHBN at home this evening. It's an honor to be here with you as we review my first term of service as your state representative. During the redistricting debacle, I sued and won in the Kentucky Supreme Court a battle to keep Mercer County whole. Splitting Mercer County by the House Democratic leadership was an unconstitutional, blatant political stunt. I voted against the 2012 budget that deauthorized and defunded our Kentucky Ag Heritage Center and slashed Mercer County's seat per pupil funding by $750,000 over the next 2 years. In August, my opponent presented the Anderson County Fiscal Court an offer from his friend in transportation, $416,000 to pave Anderson County roads. You can review the Fiscal Court's audio tape and related newspaper article. Of course, this was an inappropriate scheme to buy favor in his home county. In addition to being inappropriate, several Mercer County and Spencer County residents, many here with us this evening or listening at home, want to know why he wanted to secure paving funds from his transportation friend for his home county while neglecting roads in both Mercer and Spencer counties. My opponent also doesn't seem to understand the negative impact the Obama administration has on our Commonwealth. He's also fixated on non-existent charter school legislation to distract from his tax and borrow voting history. I look forward to discussing each of these tonight.
Thank you, Kim King. Kent Stevens, please.
Thank you, Dr. Mercer. Excuse me, I am Kent Stevens. I would like to thank everyone for coming out tonight. I would like to thank both parties for allowing us to have this forum, and I want to thank Rooster Radio for putting us on the air. I am a retired school principal. Been married to my wife Deborah for 36 years, have 2 children. One's Kate, she's a teacher at Robert B. Turner Elementary, and my youngest daughter Ellen is a librarian at Bergen. I was your representative in 2009, 2010, and I worked hard and I brought good things to Mercer County. It's a pleasure to be here tonight, and I look forward to answering these questions, and let's get with it.
Thank you, Kent Stevens. The first question goes to Kim King, and then Kent Stevens will also have an opportunity to answer it. What is your feeling about private and or charter K through 12 schools and vouchers for them?
Thank you very much for bringing that up this evening. As I mentioned in my opening remarks, that has never crossed my desk. In 2012, the 2012 regular session, it was discussed for information-only purposes in the Education Committee. No vote was taken, and it has never been to my desk. So I'm a little perplexed as why that is part of my opponent's advertising profile this season. Again, it's just a hypothetical argument so far. It hasn't crossed our desk at all. But let's talk about some of the things that have been brought up. In 2009, not even having the discussion of charter schools cost Kentucky school system $175 million in Race to the Top funds. And also, we graduated from public school. Our children graduated from public school, and 2 of our 5 granddaughters are now being educated in the Mercer County public school system. I don't know why he thinks I want to take money away from the public school system to fund private school systems. That's just a nonsensical argument at all. And that's about all I have to say.
Thank you, Kim King. Kent Stevens, your reply.
I am opposed, excuse me, I am opposed to charter schools. I was in the public school system for almost 28 years. I believe in a free and appropriate education for all. A charter school is a private school that's basically using tax dollars for private school. You know, a charter school, public school, no matter who comes through that door on any particular day, it's your responsibility as a school person to provide them with an appropriate education. Charter school can do all sorts of things. They can lengthen the school day. They can change their curriculum. They can have required mandatory parent meetings. They can have all sorts of things. We had someone from Chicago who was head of a charter school come in and talk to us while I was a member of the House. And basically I asked the question, what happens if these rules you've laid out, if they are not kept by some of your students? And I was told, after I asked it the second time, and I was told, well, we dismissed them. Now, my opponent says she is opposed to charter schools. The caucus, which she is a member of, has that on their agenda. And I've heard her speak of what's going to happen if 12 for 12 takes place. And if that happens, you better believe we're going to have charter schools, and I'm opposed to it. Enough said.
Thank you, Ken Stevens. The second question comes to you first and then to Kim King. What have you done so far to address Kentucky's prescription drug problem, and what specific actions do you plan to take in the future?
Well, Dr. Mercer, I wasn't a member of the House the past 2 years. I know while a member there, let me back up a little bit. There were two major bills that had to do with drugs in the current session. Now, I don't know about you all, but I think we have a drug problem in Anderson County, Mercer County, and Spencer County. The two bills that I'm talking about, one of them was Senate Bill 3, which is known as the meth bill. And basically what it did was it took some of the Sudafed and some of the things off the shelf that's used to make meth. It took it off the shelf and it made it harder for some people that didn't need to be getting this stuff to get this stuff to make meth. Now, your own Mercer County Sheriff, Ernie Kelty, told me that it was estimated that about 70% of this stuff that I'm talking about, this common stuff in Sudafed and this sort of thing, was being used to make meth in Mercer County. The other one was House Bill 1, which is the pill bill. And the pill bill, basically what it did was it was a way of shutting down clinics that were distributing pills when they shouldn't be distributing pills to who they were distributing them to. My opponent talks about family values. I've heard her talk about family values many, many times. Is there anything that's destroyed the family more than drugs? I don't think so. She voted against both of these bills. And I'll tell you this, had I been there, I would have voted yes. And anything that makes it difficult for people who don't need to be getting drugs, I'll vote to put a stop to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken Stevens. Kim King, you reply?
Yes, it does look like we're talking about the prescription Sudafed bill that we voted on and on House Bill 1. And yes, indeed, I voted against both of those, and I would make that same vote against tomorrow. They are both just examples of increasing the burden on law-abiding taxpayers and citizens, and it's just a tremendous burden on them. In 2011, our discussion in the Kentucky General Assembly was to cut down on meth use. When that became apparent that that was not going to be accomplished with the legislation that was before us, then in 2012, the discussion became meth production, and I noticed a very stark difference in our objective at that time. Not only voted against prescription Sudafed bill, I actually even spoke on the House floor against that measure. And my question to my colleagues in the House chamber were, if we're going to regulate prescription, make Sudafed prescription, then why aren't we regulating the other ingredients in meth? What about the battery acid and all of the other components that it takes to create meth at all of these labs, so it doesn't address that at all. House Bill 1, tremendous burden. If it were good legislation, it wouldn't have been debated all through this entire interim session, throughout the entire summer. Terrible problems. It especially impacts our pediatrics patients and our senior citizens in nursing homes, our hospice patients, where we're caring for our terminally ill family members at home. It's a terrible bill, and I would definitely vote against both of those tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim King. The third question is initially addressed to you. You both have stated that you are pro-life. What is your definition of pro-life? And what have you done or are you willing to do to get pro-life legislation passed in Kentucky?
I believe that life starts at conception, and there are no qualms, no ifs, ands, or buts about that. I have, if you will, put my money where my mouth is. In the 2011 special session, kind of a side note, I don't think we should be paid to determine budget decisions in special session. In the 2011 special session, I donated my gross pay to the Kentucky Right to Life Association. I have testified before the Kentucky General Assembly Health and Welfare Commission and Committee in support of pro-life legislation. I work for them. I have worked for the Crisis Pregnancy Center when Chris Watts was the director here in Mercer County. I didn't feel capable of counseling the ladies directly. I'm not trained in that, but I did know that I could sort and wash the baby clothes and the maternity clothes and try to help those women in their time of need. I've been endorsed by the Kentucky Right to Life, and I wear that endorsement proudly. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim King. And Ken Stevens, your reply.
I am pro-life. And I hear my opponent talk all the time about being pro-life and pro-family values, but I never hear with a plan about anything. You know, recently, not too long ago, I read an article that basically said that disbursement of contraceptives would reduce teen pregnancies and therefore would be less abortions. That same article talked about that most abortions are as a result of rape, incest, fornication, and adultery. I'd like to know what her take is on pregnancy due to rape or incest. I've never heard her say a word about fornication, and I'd love to hear her opinion or what she has to say about adultery. You know, my Bible says that abortion's wrong, but it also says that some of these other things that we're talking about are wrong as well. It seems to me like that sometimes she tends to be somewhat like the Pharisees, that there's certain sins that they pick out that they like to talk about, but there's other things they don't want to talk about. I'd like to know one of these days, I hope I'll get a chance to hear what her plan is for reducing these things that have to do with pro-life. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken Stevens. The next question initially comes to you.
Okay.
And that is, what have been your greatest accomplishments in public service to date, and why do you say that? Your greatest accomplishments.
My greatest accomplishments in public service to date would be defending everyone, being there for everyone, because I care about everyone. You know, everybody needs a voice. It seems like that sometimes some people have more of a voice than others. During my tenure in 2009 and 2010, I did my best to be fair, to treat everyone with respect and dignity, and to work for everybody. From the biggest to the smallest, from the richest to the poorest. Didn't make any difference to me, male or female. It didn't matter whether or not race. I was there because I believe that everyone deserves to have representation and everyone deserves to be represented in an appropriate manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken Stevens. Kim King, your reply.
Thank you, Dr. Mercer. Well, at the top of my list, I have worked down the redistricting lawsuit. By far, if Mercer County had been successfully split, everything else that we had would have tried to accomplish would have been inconsequential. We would have had no power, no representation. It would have just been an absolute nightmare for that unconstitutional and illegal redistricting plan to have gone through. So by far, if I'm not able to accomplish anything else, I stand by that. I heard from our city, our county leaders, our economic development, our Chamber of Commerce of what a nightmare that would have been for this county. And so I do put that at the top of my list. I also have been very active in trying to support Kentucky's coal industry. This summer I was asked to testify in front of the EPA, and I gladly did so, testifying before them when they came to Frankfurt. I spend many, many hours a day with constituent concerns. I have 3 email accounts, and I get many, many messages every day with people needing help with their personal problems. Again, in the 2012 budget, I stood up for seat per pupil funding, and I stood in the gap and stood my ground in not lying down and taking the defunding and deauthorizing of our Kentucky Ag Heritage Center. So I play a lot of defense, but that's okay. I'm willing to do that.
Thank you, Kim King. Ladies and gentlemen, we have gone through 4 of the 8 questions for our state representatives, but I'd like to remind you that you are listening to a live political candidate forum from Lions Park Community Center in Harrodsburg, Kentucky, on Hometown Radio, WHBN 1420 AM. And now that we have the Federal Communications Commission satisfied, we'll go on to question number 5. And that is for Kim King to start with. Are you in favor of drug testing requirements for government assistance? And what are your thoughts on requiring photo IDs for voting and food stamp purchases?
Thank you, Dr. Mercer. Yes, I am for both of those measures. In the 2012 session, Representative Lonnie Napier from Garrett County introduced legislation that would have required a photo ID and drug testing for government assistance and using EBT cards, that kind of thing. We had the majority of the House of Representatives join in as co-sponsors of that bill, including Speaker of the House, Greg Stumbo. And so we had a lot of support for that, but we still couldn't get a vote on the House floor. We couldn't get it out of committee. So I am definitely for that. And the other one was photo ID for
voting.
Voting, thank you. Yes, definitely. My husband and I have gone, we've kind of passed another age in our life, and we're going through all of those recommended health screenings. And it's interesting that you can't get a health screening, just regular screening test without showing a photo ID. You can't get on an airplane without showing a photo ID. I work now in Frankfurt. I can't cash a check in a Frankfurt store without showing a photo ID. It is not a burden at all, and in the language that we have introduced, we would even provide the $3 or $4 that it would take for our lower income citizens to be able to have that photo ID. Everyone needs a photo ID, and I would definitely be for both of those measures. Thank you,
Kim King. Kent Stevens.
Repeat the question.
Happy to. Are you in favor of drug testing requirements for government assistance? And what are your thoughts on requiring photo IDs for voting and food stamp purchases?
Drug testing for government assistance?
Yes.
Yes. Have no problem with that whatsoever. On the ID for voting and food stamps, I'd have to give that a lot of thought. I don't want to do anything that makes it more difficult for people to vote, or if it makes it more difficult for people to give food stamps. You know, it's like we're not New York City, or we're not big enough yet that we have to do that. I'd have to give that some thought. If there was a way to do it so that it wouldn't place a burden on people trying to vote or trying to get assistance that they need, maybe I could say yes. But I'd want to do more investigation before I would say one way or the other on that part.
All right, thank you, Kent Stevens. And the sixth question starts with you. Do you believe in the separation of church and state? Why or why not? And what are the boundaries?
Yes, I do. Our country was founded on the principle of separation of church and state. And it was done to protect the less powerful. I go to the Van Buren Church of Christ. Small congregation. When you compare the Church of Christ to other denominations, we're quite small. And I wouldn't want to be placed in a situation where the state told us what we had to do. On the other hand, I don't feel that church is a place to discuss politics. We've got Republicans, we've got Democrats go to church with me every Sunday night, on Wednesdays as well. And we don't talk about stuff like that. Our minister don't preach about stuff like that, because I've seen too many people get into arguments about that sort of thing and end up leaving congregation. You know, it sounds good. We used to start every session down at the house session with a prayer. And sometimes there were Jewish people, sometimes there were Catholic priests, sometimes there were people from different denominations. I didn't have any problem with that. But when you try to start mixing the two, it won't work. The less powerful in the long run are the ones that's going to suffer. And that was the reason behind separation of church and state to begin with. So I am in favor of separation of church and state.
Thank you, Kent Stevens. Kim King, your response.
Thank you, Dr. Mercer. The issue of separation of church and state. Actually, that tradition is put into place to protect the church from the state, not the state from the church. Carrie and I have had the opportunity to visit D.C. several times, and it's amazing the beautiful structures and the statues and the plaques and the murals that are painted and permanently engraved in all of our federal buildings, recognizing our Judeo-Christian heritage. And I'm not ashamed of it, and I am proud to support that in every way that I can. Actually, the separation of church and state came from a private letter that was written to the Danbury Baptist Association. And again, it was meant to encourage the church that the state was not going to intervene in their policies, not to necessarily protect the state from the church. And as far as nonprofits and churches, it is perfectly acceptable by the IRS and all the regulating agencies for churches to discuss issues like abortion and other things that are important to them. They just can't discuss candidates, and I think that's a very good policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim King. The seventh question starts with you. What is your opinion on tax reform, and how would government operate without tax funds?
Well, government can't operate without tax funds. I'm looking through my notes because I just received some information from the tax reform task force that is currently in place. And we have a lot of folks that are working on that. The Pew Foundation is involved in that to give us recommendations on how we can modernize our current Kentucky tax structure. And we definitely need to modernize that. The Kentucky tax structure that we have in place has been in place since the early 1950s and definitely needs to be brought into the current century for sure. I will not under any circumstance vote for a smokescreen of a tax reform that is actually just tax raising. We need to increase our tax revenues, but we need to do that by increasing the base that is paying taxes on payroll that they are earning at their job. We need to get our economy rolling, and the best way to do that is to protect Kentucky's coal industry, which keeps our utility rates affordable. We need to have a tax structure that is fair and reasonable and regulations that are easy to follow and user and business friendly. And those are the items that I work for every day. Again, the Pew Foundation is formulating what they are going to recommend to us. One thing I can tell you is they have already rejected applying a state sales tax to our food and grocery items. So that would have been a definite downfall for me, so I'm glad that they've eliminated that from the proposals that they will submit to us before session convenes in January.
Thank you, Kim King. Ken Stevens, your response.
Again, repeat the question, Dr. Munson.
Happy to. What is your opinion on tax reform, and how would government operate without tax funds?
Government can't perform without tax funds. You know, we want good schools, we want a good police department, we want a good fire department, we want things that taxes provide us with. I agree that we do have to have some sort of tax reform. The problem is, people that should be paying a lot of taxes aren't paying the taxes they should be paying. I'm anxious to see what the committee that was former Governor Mercer comes up with. I too would not vote to raise taxes on citizens of the 55th District based on the way the tax scheme is now. We need restructuring, and we need for the people who need to be paying taxes to pay the taxes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken Stevens. And the 8th question starts with you. Name 2 major issues facing the state of Kentucky and how you plan to address them.
Well, excuse me, 2 major issues facing the state of Kentucky. Number one is the one we just talked about. We're talking about redoing the tax system, or restructuring. And I would be very open to doing just that. I think it needs to be done in a fair and appropriate manner, but I certainly am open to looking at restructuring our tax system. The other thing is, continues to be, we're just losing too many jobs. There's jobs that used to be here that's not here anymore, and we need to do anything and everything we can to bring jobs back to the Commonwealth of Kentucky, and especially in the 55th District. Earlier I heard the city commissioners talking about tax incentives for businesses. It's a wonderful idea. We need to be out there attracting as many small businesses as we can, not put all our eggs in one basket, but we need to do whatever we can to attract jobs to this area so that people will have opportunity to make a good living for them and families. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken Stevens. Kim King, your reply.
Thank you, Dr. Mercer. I have jotted down 5 issues that I think are very pressing for the 2013 session. You asked for 2, so I'm going to mention those first, and then hopefully I'll have time to briefly touch on the other 3. The first one is redistricting. Since we did have that overturned in the Kentucky Supreme Court, reapportioning Kentucky's current population, that job still has to be done. So coming up probably in January, I don't think there will be a special session between the election and January. So in January, that issue is going to still have to be, that job's still going to have to be done. And you can bet your bottom dollar that I'm going to be there protecting the integrity of each of our 3 counties that form the 55th District. The second being tax reform that we just touched on for all of the reasons I just mentioned. 3, 4, and 5, pension reform that we haven't touched on tonight, but that is a looming problem. Kentucky's state worker pension funding is some of the worst in the entire nation, and that is definitely an overbearing burden and something that we have to address head on. House Bill 1, the pill mill legislation, that is an absolute disaster, and that will definitely come back up in January, and corrections will have to be made to that terrible law that passed. And also managed Medicaid, managed care that was passed during the 2011 special session. We still have yet to incur any of those savings, and we've even lost one of the 3 managed care providers that came into Kentucky. So it is an absolute mess, and the proposal that we sent the the governor came with transparency, monthly reports, accountability, and he gutted that entire proposal and just borrowed from the following fiscal year to make the 2011 budget work. So I warned you all at the time that was a terrible bill, and yes, it indeed turned out to be so. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim King. All 8 questions have now been addressed by the candidates, and we're ready for Kim King to give her closing statement.
Okay. Thank you again, Dr. Mercer, Best Sound Around, and Hometown Radio for hosting this year's Mercer County Candidate Forum. I'm sure the citizens of the 55th District appreciate the opportunity to see the vast differences in their 2012 state representative candidates. In preparing for the 2013 session, I've pre-filed a bill requiring a roll call vote for all tax raising and spending decisions. A bill mandating U.S., not foreign laws, be honored in Kentucky courts, and will again co-sponsor a bill denying special session pay for budget decisions. During this interim season, I've monitored the Tax Reform Task Force and Pension Reform Task Force proceedings, spoken before the EPA in support of Kentucky coal, followed the messes also known as Medicaid managed care and Speaker Stumbo's pill mill legislation, while maintaining a vigorous community event schedule and timely constituent services caseload. Last month, the readers of the Anderson News named me Best Local Politician in a write-in survey. I've earned the endorsement of the Commonwealth Policy Center, Freedom's Heritage Forum, the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce, the Kentucky Right to Life, the National Rifle Association, and the National Federation of Independent Business. The Kentucky Club for Growth named me Reliable Taxpayer Champion and the second most fiscally responsible House member. Thank you for the humbling honor to represent you, your families, and businesses in Frankfort. I appreciate every invitation to share significant events with you and pledge that same degree of commitment in my second term of service. I've given you my very best efforts and enjoyed every project we've worked on together. You deserve the transparency and accountability my service offers. It's a privilege to serve each of you in Frankfort. I humbly ask for your vote and prayers on November 6th.
Thank you, Kim King. Kent Stevens.
Thank you, Dr. Mercer. This is not a national election, it's a local election. It's about who can do the most for Anderson, or Mercer, or Spencer County. I was your representative in 2009, 2010. During that time, there was expansion at Hitachi. I helped bring it. I helped because a representative can't do anything without the support of the county judge, the mayor, city commissioners, the magistrates, and everybody else involved. I helped bring expansion to Corning. I helped bring a lot of money for roads. I brought money for infrastructure projects in Harrodsburg and Bergen. I helped bring FEMA to the Cummins Ferry Campground when we had the terrible weather Memorial Day weekend. I helped bring a red light out here at Mercer County High School and donated part of my special session money to the Mercer County GED program so that people could get their GED. My opponent mentioned in her beginning speech about me helping secure road funds down in Anderson County and why I didn't do it in Mercer County. Judge Edmond, if you're out there, you can ask him when it's over with. Ask him if I didn't help bring money for the Central Pike renovation that's going to take place here real soon. You do the math. You look at what happened and what Mercer County got in 2009, 2010, as opposed to what they got in 11 and 12. It's public record. Look it up. You're going to see, when you make your comparison, that I helped bring a whole lot more to Mercer County than my opponent has. And I can do it again because I can work with the people I mentioned, plus the governor and House leadership. I appreciate being here tonight. I ask for your support. I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Kent Stevens. Ladies and gentlemen, please thank our candidates. Thank you, Kim King, and thank you, Kent Stevens. Thanks to our sponsors, to Robert Wagner and Johnny Sloan from WHBN, and to David Best from Best Sound Equipment. I encourage all registered voters in Mercer County to go to the polls on Tuesday, November 6th and vote for the candidate of your choice.